Presenters for this evening. Joining us today, we have Ms. Kelly Cardew. She's the Associate Director of Admissions at George Mason University. And joining her today is Taylor Krakenberger. She's the Assistant Director of Financial Wellbeing at George Mason University. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. Taylor and I are really excited to be here to just kind of assist as we can. We are coming to you all from George Mason University, of course, and know that this is a time in the year that is fun, but also maybe a little, have a lot of questions to get answered, especially ahead of the May 1st deadline, which we will, of course, go over today. So we're excited to be here. My name is, as Ms. Boyd said, my name is Kelly Cardew. I am an Associate Director of Admissions at George Mason University, and I will throw it over to Taylor just to introduce herself as well.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here, like Kelly mentioned. My name is Taylor Krickenberger, and I'm the Assistant Director for Financial Wellbeing. So I'm thrilled to get to talk about understanding financial aid award letters and trying to make that all make a little bit more sense for you guys.
Yeah, awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here so that we can get our presentation ready to roll. Okay, everyone hopefully can see that by now. Let me put it into this guy. Awesome. So, yeah, I think the point of what Taylor and I wanted to bring forward to you all tonight is just an opportunity to kind of go over a couple different things. Specifically from the admissions point of or perspective, talking about just kind of things to be aware of, as we like to say, the next steps. At this point, I'm assuming most everybody in this space has already been admitted to the university, especially if you've gone through the direct admission program. And maybe some of you are still, maybe there's a couple people on here who are still waiting for that decision. And so either way, we just want to have an opportunity to speak on some of the things coming up, and just to be aware of, and especially if you're still deciding on what to do for your post high school kind of steps, then we want to ensure that you have that opportunity to do so. We do at this time of the year from the admissions office talk to a lot of students and families about the next steps and kind of understanding what that all means. So from an admissions perspective, I'm here to kind of give you some of that, just things to keep in mind, deadlines. And then after my portion, I'm going to turn it over to Taylor, who's going to do a little bit more of, understanding the financial aid package, but not just the financial aid package, but what financing your education can look like. And so we feel that combining these two factors, of course, are really important right now in the beginning of April. And so we want to ensure that you're getting some good information, especially if you haven't been able to come to campus or do any of our other admissions or financial aid programming, as well as be able to be here to answer any questions that you all have as well. So we, again, are excited to be here. So I'll go ahead and kick us off here, just to go over some admissions related things. And so just to start off here, and again, to just kind of have a visual, we here, I know I'm going to guess a lot of you have gone through our direct admission program. And so we, that was an opportunity for you to know you were being admitted based on a set academic criteria. And I will emphasize that, at this point in the admissions process and kind of understanding the next steps, the direct admission program, and as a student, there's nothing different in this process. And so, again, I just want to reiterate that there's no different type of process. There's no different kind of next steps for a direct admission student or someone who went through this program. But we, of course, wanted to kind of be in a little bit smaller of a population tonight and ensure that you are understanding and knowing what is going on. And so for a lot of folks in this space tonight, I'm sure a lot of people already know about George Mason. So I'm not going to belabor everything you see on the screen here. But something from our perspective from the admissions office, of course, we always want to just remind folks that, this is the time of the year where it is, time to make those decisions. And as you start to think about, college choice, be mindful that these are things that you can look forward at George Mason University. We are the largest public research university in Virginia. And so what that really means is that students have access to getting engaged in research, which is a really great function of an academic experience. We're also the largest school in Virginia with 29,000 undergraduate students. And while maybe that sounds a little overwhelming to some people, we really at George Mason strive to be at that larger size school, while also having smaller different opportunities for smaller engagement and smaller community. I'll highlight some of those opportunities to get connected tonight. And again, some key things to kind of think about as you're thinking about where to go to school. And so kind of wanted to just frame that for you all. For those who are starting to think about, obviously a major, this can be a very important thing. But I will also emphasize that I think a great thing about coming into George Mason is that it's okay if you don't know exactly what your major is going to be. Students at George Mason have until the end of their sophomore year or their second year to declare a major. And so that means that there's a lot of room for exploring and for figuring out what it is that you do want to pursue. As you can see on the screen here, we do have lots of different majors. We also have other things that can be added to a major called a minor, which is going to be for those that are maybe a little unfamiliar, it is still getting content and knowledge into that field or industry without having to do a full entire course load of a major. So it gives students an accessibility to get some of that information without having to do a whole 120 credit degree. And minors and concentrations allow for students to really specialize in fields of interest while also getting the opportunity to expand their academic horizons as well. Some things to also keep in mind as you're thinking about, maybe you are a little stressed about choosing a major. I can absolutely tell you that the way that the academics at George Mason are set up, in addition to not having to choose your major until the end of sophomore year, is that the way our curriculum is set up is that you have a couple semesters to be able to explore what you might be interested in, and that really comes through in what's called our Mason core classes. So Mason core is our general education requirements, meaning that students will take a class in every subject or field. So it's kind of similar to what high school is right now, where of course you're taking an English, a math, a social studies, and science and things like that. So that translates over into college as well. But we believe that this allows students to really get a little bit more of a larger focus that is very synonymous with what we call like a liberal arts education. So not being so siloed into what you are, pursuing, but getting that exposure to other things. The core Mason core is a great way for students who maybe are not as sure of what they want to pursue, and helping them just kind of direct a little bit better. But we have lots of resources available at the university, like academic advising. Another one that I'll highlight in a little bit called success coaches. But also, if you're someone who knows a little bit more of the career field or the industry that you're interested in, we also have techniques and methods within our curriculum to help you understand that there's a lot of different majors that can probably match that curriculum. And I'm happy to share our course catalog with later on. This is a great way, again, to kind of see if you're interested in at least more of a field, the various majors that can go into that. And so I think that that is one example and one way to kind of help think about your major. I also tell students a lot of times too, maybe start thinking through the subjects and classes that you've taken in high school. You know, is there any one that really sticks out, that you like the best or that you find the most interesting? I can speak, for example, I went into college undecided. However, as I started thinking about, majors and, or excuse me, I should even say what subjects or what classes I enjoyed in high school, I I always went more towards, my Englishes and my social studies or histories and more of those, social science humanities type of coursework. I was not really a science math person. Um, and so that framework, though, helped me as I went into college, knowing that staying on the humanities and social sciences and English side of things was definitely going to be where I probably was going to find my major. And that's exactly what happened. While I did go into school undecided, I had an idea of some different programs or some interests that I had, and that helped me go into college really open-minded in a really open-minded way, to be able to sit in classrooms, to be able to understand how college classes even operate and work, and just kind of get a sense of what is it like to be a college student. And I think that that allowed me to take the pressure off of what does that major have to be, because again, because of the way that the curriculum is designed, it's okay if you don't know right off the bat. So that's just a little something. And sorry if that was a little bit of a tangent, but I think it's important to recognize that it's okay if you don't know exactly what that major is going to be. And there's a good chance that maybe it's going to, you're going to change your mind a little bit. Maybe there's a different area maybe you're going to take a class that actually surprises you that you like that so much. And so this is all just to say that we have lots of different options at Mason, and all that are going to be at a really high academic level, where you're going to get really great experiential learning or hands-on experience for your studies, and that really does, the location of our university also really contributes to that, where we are, as a university, are getting that firsthand knowledge with different partners off campus, and that really positively impacts a student's college experience. And speaking on some opportunities for seeing classes and kind of getting a feel for that, I absolutely want to plug, which is on the screen here, but definitely want to plug some of our admitted student opportunities going on right now within our Office of Admissions, one of those being shadowing classes, both in person or virtually. So this is an opportunity where you can literally come to campus, you can sit in on a class with a current student, and this is a great way, again, to see what a college class can be, an opportunity to engage with other students as well as a professor. And so if that's something that sounds interesting to you, I'd love to be able to connect with you further, but you can also sign up for this via your admissions portal, which is the same place, where you would have reviewed or seen your official admissions letter. So this is a great opportunity to kind of see campus a little bit differently, and can really be beneficial if you're still deciding where to go to college. I mentioned this before, but I really wanted to highlight some of the student resources that we do have here on campus, because I think, again, we are a big school, and you guys are all coming from being in high school, where you've known your people, you've known who your school counselor likely is, you've had a familiarity with this setting and just what the school what your individual high school has to offer. And that can be a little intimidating going to college, knowing, that there's just a whole new environment and campus to learn. And so we just want to ensure that you feel comfortable and know ahead of time that if you end up choosing George Mason, you have people who are on campus, who are here to support you, who are here to be with you, and to help you go through this process. You definitely don't have to go through this alone. So one I really wanted to highlight is our student success coaching. Student success coaching, I actually really like to give a comparison, is kind of like your school counselor currently in high school. Your school counselor is somebody who is knowledgeable, of course, in academics and helping you select classes, but they also help with other things and helping maybe bridge your current school yourself to the different services or things that you need at your high school. And student success coaching is exactly that at George Mason. They're here to assist with, academic services and support, but also in helping bridge other resources and services that you may need to the rest of the university. Because again, I recognize that there's a lot going on at George Mason, and it can be, honestly, things can get lost in the shuffle sometimes. And that's just the nature of, I think, college and something new. And so a student success coach is a great person to go to. Every student who enrolls at George Mason University is assigned a student success coach. So this is not somebody that you have to pick out on your own. This is somebody who will be assigned to you during the summer or orientation, and will be with you the whole time that you are at George Mason. And so I definitely wanted to plug this resource on campus, because again, I believe it's a great way to get integrated into the university, and again, just kind of define that friendly face. Something that I do want to emphasize, and again, this is a very short list of student resources that we do have on campus, but something I do want to emphasize is these resources again are here, but maybe unlike high school, you do as an adult and as that student do have to seek these things out. And so that is why it's important to stay up to date with your email. Students stay up to date with different newsletters, or getting different listservs, things like that, so that you have a better understanding of what is available and who can support you. But student resources, of course, go from everything from academic services to psychological services, as well as gaining leadership skills and having identity groups to go to be connected to. And so again, we believe that supporting students can work in a lot of different ways. And so just really wanted to emphasize those tonight. So that was just a kind of brief thing about I would say, discussion about kind of overall, the university. But now I want to get a little bit more into the nitty gritty of what can you do next? And so in addition, I know I just talked, if you're somebody who is still kind of deciding where you want to go to school, that is absolutely okay. We have a deposit deadline, or excuse me, I should say a decision deadline of May 1st, which basically means that we have about a month or so for you to make your college decision. May 1st is like a national deadline. So a lot of colleges and universities use the May 1st deadline as kind of like their date to see who's going to enroll at their school. And so in the next, couple weeks or so, of course, we don't want you to make a decision until you are firmly confident about that decision. And so we do encourage you. And then when Taylor gets on in the webinar in a little bit, she'll explain a big part of why you might still be waiting on that decision, which is, of course, your financial aid. But as you're thinking through, financial aid might be a big factor in what you decide to do post high school, but other things to take advantage of, like the class shadows opportunity that I talked about, coming to one of our admitted student events. We have a really big open house that's coming up in April, which is a great way to get a little bit more engagement and FaceTime with some people on our campus. These are all a couple of different ways that can help inform and help you make your decision. But once you have decided, and hopefully all of you decide to come to George Mason, we encourage you to submit your enrollment deposit, which is a $250 deposit, by May 1st. Your $250 enrollment deposit is a portion of your tuition. And so essentially that is telling the university or telling us that you are committing to enroll at the university. In addition to the enrollment deposit, there is also a housing component, which is on the screen here as well. Housing also operates with the May 1st deadline. So if you forget anything tonight, just know that May 1st is your main date to remember. In addition, again, to the enrollment deposit, which tells the university that it gives us an indication that you are planning to enroll, housing also helps us know that. And so with the housing, students either have the option here in the local Northern Virginia area of living on campus or applying for an exemption to live at home. It is truly your choice as to how you would like to go about your housing situation. And I will also say, students and families, especially in the local area, may not exactly know what to do. And I would tell students that as many, we have plenty of students who will live at home, and that is the decision that as a student and the family has made. But we also have plenty of local students who do live on campus. And I think it really just goes towards what is it that you're looking for in that first, especially that first year college experience. If you decide to live on campus, the May 1st deadline, we are going to be asking for you to submit your housing application, which does come with an $150 fee. So that those housing application and that fee would be tied together. And essentially that is holding your place for a spot on campus for housing. In addition to, kind of some things beyond the May 1st deadline, is essentially, think about May 1st as kind of being your door to the rest of the things that you need to do on campus. And so one of those things is orientation. All new and incoming students do have to register for orientation. So if I have anybody in the room here who has already paid their deposit, first off, congratulations. But we also encourage you to make sure that you do register for orientation. Like I said, it is required for all new and incoming students. This not only is the opportunity to have to see campus a little bit differently, to start to get to know other students, but this is also where you will register for your classes for your freshman year, where you'll get to meet your academic advisor for the first time. And so it's really important to make sure that you register and get the slot that you would like over the summer. We offer orientation sessions all throughout the summer, so there's not just one to choose from. But we of course want to ensure that we encourage you to register for orientation as soon as you can. As you can see, orientation does not become available until April 15th. So for anyone in the room who has already paid a deposit, that date is coming up. But that still gives those plenty of time who decide to wait until May 1st, plenty of time to still register. Now, kind of going into something that, that maybe you're waiting on to make that decision is your financial aid. We absolutely recognize that finances are a big part of deciding on what and where to go to school. And so we absolutely encourage you that before you make any decisions, whether that's with George Mason, whether that's with any other school that you're considering, that you review your financial aid package, that you understand what the different elements mean, and also remember and recognize that whatever you're seeing in your freshman year, that could potentially change in the years to come. And so it is always important to know what that potential outlook could be, but also that could potentially change along the way, which we'll talk about, or Taylor will talk about with different, reapplying for FAFSA, as well as different scholarship opportunities, things like that. And so with that said, I'm going to skip that right now because I think we're kind of belabored the orientation stuff pretty well. So I'm going to pass it over to Taylor at this point, and so that she can kind of start talking through some of those key things and elements and just understanding the financial aid package.
So Kelly nailed it with that segue. Like she said, a lot of you guys might be still making your decision about what school you want to attend. And we recognize that finances come into play in that decision-making process a lot. And so the information I'm sharing tonight is especially helpful for reviewing your Mason financial aid package. But this is also skills that you can use when you're comparing your award letters for other schools and looking at things too. So I hope you guys definitely have some concrete takeaways tonight in terms of finances. Whenever I start my presentations, I like to go over some key terms, just so that if I use them throughout my slides, oops, looks like we're starting in the middle. Just so that if we use these terms throughout the slides, they kind of make sense and you can look back to them later. Because I know you can kind of get lost in the alphabet soup of it all. There's so many terms and numbers kind of being thrown at you. So it's my hope that we can kind of demystify that for you guys a little bit. Kelly, if you just want to go ahead and pop out all the terms, because it looks like it started with one in the middle. All right, so beginning with cost of attendance and student aid index, or your SAI. So those are two terms that you will see on your financial aid package from any school because they're used to calculate your financial aid eligibility. So the cost of attendance is not a specific bill that is being given to you from any particular school, but rather it is kind of an estimated overall cost that a school prepares to help calculate your financial aid eligibility and kind of give you an idea of what it could cost for an entire academic year of not just being a student and paying your tuition and fees, but also other costs that you'll incur during your first year as a student. So it will include things like living expenses and personal expenses as well. So consider that when you're looking at the cost of attendance, there's a lot of different things being factored in there. Your student aid index, I like to talk about as kind of the victory piece of putting all of that information into your FAFSA or VASA application. You've spent a lot of time on your application putting in your financial information, and the grand result is that student aid index number. And that is really critical for the schools to take that number in comparison with the cost of attendance and calculate your financial need and your financial aid eligibility. So in that cost of attendance, like I mentioned, you're going to see things that are direct costs, but also indirect costs. Typically, your direct costs are going to be things directly related to your education and billed by the university. So tuition and fees. Indirect costs are things, like I said, that you might incur these costs during that first year as a student that might not be directly from the school. So your personal expenses, your transportation costs, and by that, I don't just mean a parking pass, but also maybe gas or a car payment that the student is responsible for. So there's a lot of indirect costs being factored in there as well. And finally, we have out-of-pocket costs or your net cost. And that is going to be the financial, the remaining balance that you'll need to kind of come up with a financial plan for that won't be able to be covered by the financial aid. So when we're looking at your financial aid package, there's typically going to be 4 main types of financial aid awards that you'll see. So we have grants, scholarships, federal work study, and student loans. I'm going to go into a bit more detail about those on my next slide here. Up at the top, you'll see that fun arrow. So I think that's a fun visual representation for some of my friends because I, like Kelly, was not originally a super fun math person. So I like to kind of visually represent how we're coming up with these financial aid packages for you. And so you'll see here we have that cost of attendance, that number calculated by the school that's factoring in all of those costs. They subtract your SAI from your FAFSA or VASA application, and we're left with your financial need. And it's really the goal to try to use these different financial aid types to match as much of that financial need as possible. So beginning with scholarships and grants, those can typically be referred to as gift aid because it's free money that is given to you and does not need to be repaid. So scholarships, those can come from multiple different buckets and be awarded to you for multiple different reasons. So typically we're thinking about academic performance, merit, sometimes financial need, or some sort of talent. So maybe if you are an athletic star, a debate team star, you could be awarded a talent scholarship. And generally, for first year students at Mason, a scholarship is awarded at this point of admission based off of your application and would be included in your financial aid package when you review it. In future years that you're at, once you're at Mason and have established a Mason GPA with us, you would also be given the opportunity to apply for additional internal Mason scholarships on that merit that you've kind of built at Mason with us. And there's also outside scholarships that can be awarded. I'm going to talk a lot more about those in a little bit. In terms of grants, grants are always going to be based off of financial need that's demonstrated through that calculation up there. But the funds can be coming from the federal, the state, or the institutional, meaning the school level. Federal if you're a FAFSA filer. So these funds can be a little more limited. And so, like Kelly mentioned, your FAFSA or your VASA is unfortunately not a one and done deal. It is an application that you will have to submit every year that you are a student. So I just always like to point out when I'm talking to students and families that submitting your FAFSA or VASA application early is really important to maximize your eligibility for those grants that have a little bit more limited funding available. We will definitely do our best to try to contact you and make sure that you're reminded when the FAFSA or VASA is released every year so that you can remember to get it submitted, but just something that I like to encourage everyone to keep in mind. Now, federal work study is available to FAFSA filers that demonstrate financial need through that calculation, but I like to talk about it a little bit separately from the rest of the aid because it operates a little bit differently. Federal work study is essentially a pool of money that you are eligible for by working an on-campus job. So when you're working at that job, the money in your paychecks is coming from that pool of money. And so usually, since you do have to work to earn that money, it's not going to be available right away at the beginning of the semester. So when we're thinking about federal work study, I always encourage students and families to think about that as something that may be best to pay for some of those indirect expenses, like transportation or personal expenses that are incurred throughout the semester, since that money won't necessarily be in your pocket at the beginning of the semester. Next, we have loans, which I also like to talk about a little bit separately because loans do need to be repaid. That is borrowed money, and that does come with that responsibility element. And I just always want to make sure if we're talking about loans, we're doing it in a way where we're fully aware of what all that means that we're taking on, and so that we don't do it lightly without that full understanding. And I will go into more detail about loans here on my next slide. So as a part of your financial aid package, there are two types of federal direct student loans that you may be eligible for. So your application for them was really just filling out the FAFSA application. The two main types of federal direct student loans that you could see would be the subsidized and the unsubsidized loan. The main difference here is that the subsidized loan does require financial need to be demonstrated, like in my fun arrow calculation. And so the interest is not paid by the student while they're enrolled or in their grace period. Instead, the government subsidizes or pays the interest on that loan. The unsubsidized loan does not require financial need, and so that interest begins accruing right away and is the student's responsibility come repayment. The benefits of these types of loans is their repayment structure. So repayments not required until after your grace period, which is 6 months after the student graduates. withdraws from classes, or falls below what's called half-time status for their enrollment. And another benefit is that generally federal loans are going to come with lower interest rates than some of the other student loan options that are available. I do always like to note as well that there are some additional requirements when it comes to borrowing loans. For things like your gift aid, your scholarships and grants, we're pretty sure you're not going to say no to the free money. So we're going to go ahead and accept those for you, and they would pay out assuming you're meeting those requirements for enrollment. But for the loans, that is not something we would accept on your behalf, and we would want to make sure you would like to do so. So those require an extra step of you accepting the loan and then doing what's called the master promissory note, which is the formal signature acknowledgement that you are borrowing a loan on the student aid website where you filled out your FAFSA. And also the entrance loan counseling, which is an educational element. It's almost like a module that walks you through understanding loans, the borrowing process, how interest is calculated, and how repayment works. Because like I mentioned, we really want to make sure that you are well informed about the student loan process before you decide to take out those loans. And I always like to mention as a fun tip, when you're first doing your first look through of your financial aid award letter, to skip over the student loans at first, because you might want to just consider what the cost would be with just your gift aid in the calculation, and consider the student loans later once you're able to see what your net cost is looking like. That would just be my word of advice. Different schools, you might see the loans in different locations on the award letter. So just keep an eyeball out for it. And we'll see that on an example award letter at the end. So making up the difference for that net cost. So what if the aid that you are offered is not sufficient to cover all of that financial need or all that's left in your net cost? So first, I always like to recommend that you consider at Mason, we have payment plan options. There's several different installment plans that you can register for, where you are able to break up those remaining payments into multiple different installments throughout the semester. I always like to talk about outside scholarship opportunities because they are all over the place. And now is a really critical time for you guys to take advantage of outside scholarship applications. So think about what clubs you're involved in at your high school. Are there any volunteer organizations that you're involved in? Do your parents belong to any professional organizations that offer scholarships to their dependents? Or does your parents' employer offer any scholarships to dependents? There's also a myriad of online scholarship opportunities that are out there. I always say to cast a wide net, but looking local can be very, very impactful since you're going to be competing in a smaller pool to secure those scholarship applications. Or scholarship awards, I should say, I'm sorry. Next, there are some additional loan options that can help you make up that net cost as well. There's another federal loan called the Parent Plus loan. It's a little bit different and would not appear directly in your financial aid award letter because it does require a separate application. The parent is the primary borrower. And it does involve a credit check to be eligible for that loan. But it does have the similar federal advantages, like the generally lower interest rates, as well as the same repayment structure as the other loans that we talked about. There's also other private loan, student loan options out there. We have a tool that I linked here where you're able to kind of filter through your specific different circumstances and see multiple different student loan lenders in one place, their contact information, and generally what their interest rates are looking like. A few things just to note when you're looking at your financial aid award letter that might not occur to you off the bat is to make sure that your housing status is accurate on your financial aid award letter. So usually there's going to be 3 different types of housing statuses in the eyes of the financial aid folks, and that's going to be on campus, off campus, or off campus with parent. And all of those options come with a slightly different cost of attendance. So when you are looking at your financial aid award letter, it's really important that housing status is reflected correctly. So if it says that you are living off campus with parent, but you're actually living on campus, I would encourage you to reach out to the Office of Financial Aid and make that correction, just in case it's going to change your financial aid award in any way. Next, I always like to highlight enrollment, something that we might not think about. So typically, your financial aid package is made under the assumption that the student will be enrolled full-time, which is going to be 12 credit hours or more. We usually recommend to graduate within 4 years that students are going to register in 15 credit hours per semester. But we also have a lot of students that opt to take courses part-time because that matches their plans better. If they are wanting to work more hours, and being a student isn't going to be their full-time responsibility at that time. But that can come with differences for your financial aid package. So if you know ahead of time that you are only planning to enroll part-time, that is a-okay, but I just recommend that you meet with a financial aid professional to make sure you understand how that could change your award, because I don't want there to be any surprises later. Additionally, change in residency. So if you are an out-of-state student, but you actually found out that was an error and you worked with the university to get that updated to in-state, but your financial aid package is still reflecting out-of-state status, I would definitely encourage you once again to contact the Office of Financial Aid because your award could look a bit different. So I just don't want there to be, like I said, any surprises down the line in case of any adjustments that are made there. And finally, I know I've talked about outside scholarships maybe too much at this point, but I'd also just like to note that at this point, Mason probably might not be aware that you're receiving an outside scholarship, especially if you haven't committed to attending with us. You probably haven't notified us about that outside scholarship yet, which is fine, but keep that in mind when you're reviewing your award letter as well. I know I was awarded $500 from this organization, so that could also be added into my financial aid package later. Just something to keep in mind. Briefly, I wanted to mention accessing and accepting your George Mason financial aid. All of that information is in Patriot Web, which is our website where students are able to register for their classes, view their financial aid, and other kind of admin things that a student may need to do. It's really your student portal. And so if you have not yet logged into Patriot Web, you would first need to activate your what we call net ID and password, or your login information at our Patriot Pass website. So I just wanted to mention that. So you will have the instructions here in our PowerPoint later, in case you want to reference it if you haven't done that already to view your financial aid award. And then this brings us to our last slide, where I have kind of an example of a financial aid letter that we're just going to kind of make some connections to what we've talked through so far already. So you'll see here in box 1, we have direct billable costs, which you guys all now know are the costs directly related to your education, so tuition and fees. In box 2, we have estimated grants and scholarships, or gift aid, that free money. So for this student, the estimated grants and scholarships are more than the tuition and fees. So that means the grants and scholarships are going to cover the tuition and fees in total. So for billable costs, the student would have no financial responsibility. But then when you look here at our yellow box for the cost of attendance, you'll see first, you can note the housing status listed as with parent there. If this student actually was going to live on campus, this would be when they would want to contact financial aid. They even have a note right there to contact financial aid to get that updated. But you'll also see here in the cost of attendance, they're adding not just the direct billable costs, but also those indirect costs, those books and supplies, personal expenses, living expenses. which adds to that $32,374 figure. So that's the total cost of attendance with the indirect and direct costs, direct billable costs. So then when you subtract out that gift aid, those grants and scholarships, we're left with that net cost of attendance figure. And so that's where you would maybe want to be making some sort of financial plan for how you're going to cover those remaining costs. But also keep in mind that it's not a specific bill. So if you are a very luxurious person, perhaps your personal expenses might actually be higher than what we calculated here for you. Or if you're a more frugal person, it could be a lot less. So you'll also kind of want to consider yourself and your own needs as well. And what I like here, of course, I like our award letter. Something I like about it is that those loans and that federal work study are listed separately in boxes 5 and 6. So like I mentioned throughout the presentation, it's best to kind of look at your cost without those at first, in case you're unsure if you would like to accept those loans or if you would like to use federal work study. So you can kind of see those afterwards as things that could help support your remaining net cost of attendance, but they're not necessarily factored in from the jump in case you're unsure about selecting those options. So I hope that this was helpful for you guys to get an overview of financial aid and really how to understand and read your financial aid award letters from Mason, but also from other schools that you may be looking at. Here we have our contact information. We would love to connect with you. If you have any specific questions, if you'd like to schedule like a one-on-one meeting with us to go through a financial aid award letter, we'd be happy to do that as well. I don't know if you have any other closing remarks, Kelly.
Yeah, no, I think that was great. And I would just also echo Taylor in just saying that, we wanted to be sure, hopefully some of you were able to pull up your financial aid award packages or financial aid packages and kind of play along with us. But yeah, I love that we were able to kind of highlight, what a package looks like and kind of break that down. And I know that it can look really intimidating at the jump and at the start, but when you're able to really sit down and break it apart, it hopefully looks a little bit more tangible. And so I think the biggest thing that I would also emphasize is it really comes into play with those, personal costs, those books and things like that. Those are things that, again, like Taylor said, that are really amendable to you personally. I will personally say, like, when it comes to those books, like, I would even bet that that's an outdated figure, but on average, there are so many great ways to get really cheap and maybe a lot of nowadays, a lot of free books. George Mason utilizes a lot of open resources for textbooks. A lot of professors do. And so there's a really good chance that you can not pay a lot for books as you go through college. So that's just one thing I wanted to plug and as looking at that financial aid package. But at this point in time, I know we have about 10 or 11 minutes or so, maybe 12, if I'm doing math correctly. And so just wanted to offer up an opportunity for people to ask any questions, whether that's more that directed to me or directed to Taylor. And so, yeah, I guess the best way is, I think, chat, or maybe people can go off
Um,
mute. I'm not sure what the best way.
So, we won't have time for Q&A today.
Oh, okay.
However, no worries. However, please everyone know that the session was recorded. I will provide you with both Kelly and Taylor's presentation, so you'll have it available to you, and also their contact information. As they said, you're more than welcome to reach out to them if you want to go over your award letter with them. They'll be more than happy to do that for you. And so, again, the session was recorded. Information will be provided in a follow-up to all who registered. And I just wanted to say thank you guys so much for joining us this evening. We have placed the survey in the chat. So if you just take a minute or so to fill that out, let us know how we're doing. And any feedback on maybe future sessions that you'd like to see more of. So again, thank you everyone so much, and I hope everyone has a wonderful evening. Thank you.